bless you, everyone, and welcome to another Pastors Speaks. Today, I want to think and talk about the reason why we as Christians, or just as human beings, might experience adversity, tests, trials, and different circumstances. And this might not be going where you expect it to, because there's so many areas around this that we could explore. But I was listening to Genesis and the story of Joseph. And while I have majored in his success and in his ability to go from the prison to the palace all in a day's time, today I want to look at his younger life. So we know that his brothers were angry with him. We know that they were envious and jealous because Jacob, their father, loved Joseph more than he loved, or appeared to love Joseph more than he loved them. And of course, we know that's because Jacob had really loved Rachel, his mother. And I guess that just gave him a head start. Yeah, let's put it that way. And so we see, or at least it's implied, that Jacob spoiled Joseph, gave him gifts, even things that he gave him that he shouldn't have had till a later time. And we know that one of those things was that beautiful coat of many colors. And I've always thought of Joseph as somebody that's sweet, butter wouldn't melt in his mouth kind of person. But I realized in taking a deeper look at the story that Joseph, at a very young age, was a very arrogant boy. He was full of himself. He knew how important he was to his father, and he was very secure in his position, and that led him to have a wrong outlook on life, how he viewed other people, even how he saw himself. And so this leads to his brothers deciding to do away with him, okay? And before that, I think the catalyst was when Joseph tells them about his dream that he's had about them all bowing to him, including his father and his father's wives, all paying obeisance to him. And I think that was the straw that breaks the camel's back. And so when the father sends Joseph to find his brothers, they see him coming, and they immediately developed a plan. And I literally don't think it was the first time that they had spoken about what they would really like to do with Joseph. This was just now the opportunity to actually do something. And so we know the story of how they put him into the pit, then they take him out of the pit, and they sell him into slavery. And really thinking about that on a deeper level, I know that just like us, God had a plan for Joseph's life. But again, just like us, often God cannot use us as we are. We have to go through some adversity. We have to have some of that pride and self-assurance knocked out of us so that we become dependent on God. And in Joseph's case, it turned out to be quite extreme, because although he's rescued from the pit, he's then sold into slavery. The slavery results in him because of his ethos. I think he must have been learning as he went along, because of his ethos of working unto the Lord rather than to man. Then we see that he gets promoted. He's very loved and trusted by Potiphar, his master. And because of his good looks, and maybe he had a few muscles and a six-pack, I don't know. But because of that, then he was very attractive to Potiphar's wife. But we can see that at this point, Joseph has developed some integrity, and his character is already starting to change. Because now he's not just looking at how he relates to those around him, but he's looking at how does he relate to God. And he says, how can I do this thing and sin against my God? How many of us take the time to pause and ask that question? Often we just think about the satisfaction that it's going to bring us, how we're going to feel after we've indulged, and we don't actually think about the impact on our relationship with God or how God would feel about our sin. God is not affected by our sin because he is holy, but he is impacted by our relationship becoming a distant one, because his desire is to be close and intimate with us and to have communion with us. So we see Joseph, he's beginning to learn. And so now God promotes him to the next level of learning. But at this point, because I realize I'm going to have to do part 2, but at this point, we see that Joseph has had a lot of time to reflect, or at least we can summarize that he's had a lot of time to reflect. He's probably thought about his brothers, what led them to do what they did, and maybe he even realized that he had provoked them in more ways than one. But I am saying to you today that we cannot get away from people who irritate us. Yes, we can leave the room, but they're going to be everywhere, because God has developed sandpaper and chisels and hammers in our lives in order to knock off those rough edges, in order to bring us to a place of dependence on him. Because I don't know for anybody else, but I realized subconsciously my goal was always to get to that place where I would be independent and I'd have enough money to not depend on God. That is not God's plan for our life. He wants us to be totally dependent upon him. And so today, I'm saying to you, let us see every test, every trial, every adversity as the fact that God is trying to shape us in order that he can position us for major impact, not just in our lives, but in the lives of the people around us. And in part 2, we're going to look at some of the impact of Joseph's life as he was dependent upon God. God bless you, and I'll see you next time.